Imagine an execution method so controversial that even veterinarians won't use it on most animals. That's the reality facing Kenneth Eugene Smith, an Alabama prisoner. Convicted in a murder-for-hire scheme back in 1988, Smith's fate took a shocking turn in 2022. An attempt to execute him through lethal injection failed, leaving him alive but marked for death. Now, Smith is set to face an execution method never before used in the United States: death by nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas, also known as nitrogen hypoxia, is an experimental form of capital punishment. It's a method that's been authorized in 3 states, but it's about to be used for the first time. So how does it work? Well, the procedure involves fitting a mask over the prisoner's face. This mask is then connected to a source of nitrogen gas, which is piped in. Now you might be wondering, why nitrogen gas? The rationale is that nitrogen is a relatively inert gas that displaces oxygen in the environment, leading to oxygen deprivation and eventually death. However, this method is not without its concerns. One of the most significant issues is the seal of the mask. There's a risk that the seal may leak, allowing oxygen to mix with the nitrogen. If this happens, it could prolong the execution and cause undue distress. Another concern is the possibility of vomiting during the execution. If the prisoner were to vomit while wearing the mask, it could interfere with the flow of nitrogen gas and potentially lead to a botched execution. Critics argue this method is distressing and inhumane, as it effectively suffocates the person to death. Smith's attorney has argued that a second execution attempt would constitute cruel and unusual punishment. The legal battle surrounding this case is as complex as it is controversial. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has weighed in, criticizing the planned execution as a violation of international human rights treaties. This criticism stems from the experimental nature of the method and the potential for distress, as indicated by the American Veterinary Medical Association's guidelines. These guidelines suggest that nitrogen hypoxia, the very method planned for Smith's execution, can be distressing for some species. In the midst of this controversy, Smith's lawyers are planning to appeal the decision. They argue that the use of nitrogen gas is not only cruel but experimental, as it has never been attempted before. However, the judge's ruling has allowed the nitrogen execution plan to proceed. This ruling is not final and could be appealed to the US Supreme Court, potentially setting a legal precedent for future cases. Despite the controversy, Alabama has been granted permission to carry out the execution using nitrogen gas. As the first execution of its kind, this event has far-reaching implications. This is uncharted territory, and the outcome could set a precedent for the future of capital punishment, not only in Alabama, but across the United States and potentially the world over. Should this method prove successful, it may be adopted by other states that still uphold the death penalty. In fact, Oklahoma and Mississippi have already permitted the use of nitrogen hypoxia as an execution method. A successful outcome could potentially see this method becoming the new standard, and perhaps even a more humane alternative to lethal injection. However, the ethics of such a method are still in question. The use of this method also poses a risk to witnesses. There are worries about the mask's seal leaking oxygen and the risk of the condemned vomiting during the execution. These are factors that could traumatize those in attendance and create further controversy around this execution method. Moreover, if this method is deemed a failure, it could serve as a stark reminder of the inherent flaws in capital punishment and perhaps push more states towards its abolition. As we await the outcome of this unprecedented event, one thing is clear: the world is watching.